Hello. Uh, I like to kind of address the elephant in the room from my last video that I created. I created an elephant in that video. And I think the elephant is that you're mad. You're mad because uh, you're a slave. And you're a slave to your wants, needs, desires, what society puts on you, what your job, what your education puts on you. And the one thing most slaves don't want to hear is that they are enslaved. It's like an alcoholic. He doesn't want to hear that he's an alcoholic. If you meet somebody, you don't go to a bar and start calling everybody alcoholics. I mean, in that situation, you wouldn't be right for most, for some. You would be right for some, and most likely those are the ones that would get most mad at you for doing it. Just like you're mad at me for pointing out that you're a slave. And, like I said in the last video, and the same with the alcoholic, it's not your fault. It's just your condition. It's just who you are. Why I'm not a slave and you are, well, that's a quagmire of problems. Because I'm not like you, and I'm nothing like you. And I think if you want to be like me, I think that even proves even more that you're a slave, because you shouldn't want to be like anybody. You should want to be like you. I don't want to be like you. I'm not doing this video to be more like you or to show you that I'm like you. And I'm not even doing it to show you that I'm not like you. I'm showing you myself. I'm giving you my real self, my real picture of who I am. And I'm not trying to hide it with lies or innuendo or deception or anything like that. And in a way, I'm trying to free you, but not from your job, not from your family, not from your education, not from your wallet, but from your own mind. Like an alcoholic is not a prisoner to alcohol. He's a prisoner to his mind. His mind desires the alcohol and will drink it and kill as many people and still walk away and say, I don't have a problem. And that's you. You're enslaved and you're walking away saying, I'm not enslaved, I'm free. I have $1 million. How can you call me a slave? See, devil wants to trip me up. I just went to the Bahamas on vacation. How can you call me a slave? The people that work in Bahamas, they're slaves. To an extent, they are. Some. But even though you went to the Bahamas, you're still a slave because you live in a slave society. And you can't escape the slave society. It just made you who you are. And it's very hard to separate you from your society. I mean, it's even with you and your family. Your family is a mini society that you're a part of. And for you to walk away from that society would be a big deal. Would have an effect on them and you, and everything in your life would be affected. And you still wouldn't be free. Like I said, you can walk out your front door, you can walk out your apartment, your house, whatever, and say, I'm never going back. I'm going to be free. I'm going to go live in the woods and pitch a tent and have a fire and be free. You're just a slave in the woods then, you know. So because like I said, it's not the alcohol. It's not the environment. It's not where your feet are. It's where your head is. And your head is in a slave mentality. And look, there's a lot of reasons for it on a grand scale. I mean, if you live in Manhattan, and I don't live in Manhattan, but I live pretty close to Manhattan, just a train ride away. But I've worked in Manhattan. I've had jobs in Manhattan and stuff like that. And the slave mentality helps Manhattan work. You know, uh, people get on a train like they're sheep. People go to work like they're sheep. And if they didn't, it would be chaos. And chaos is ultimate freedom to an extent, but not in a enslaved um, society. Chaos is chaos, not freedom. Because when you think of chaos in an enslaved society, you think of looting, you think of breaking windows and stuff like that. And that's not the chaos I'm talking about. The chaos is doing whatever you want, not hurting anybody else, but doing what you want. And maybe you'll go to work today, maybe you won't. Uh, you know, uh, you won't have a registered car. You won't have a license plate on your car. You won't have a license. That's chaos in freedom. And I don't say you have a license so you can drive a car and kill people. I mean, there's a reason to have a license because it means you've reached a certain level of competency behind the car that you're safe to drive a car, you know, and you won't hurt people while you drive your car. And that's why they say driving is a privilege. It's not a right, so they can take it away. You don't drive so well, so you're not going to do it anymore. You drive drunk, so you're not driving anymore. Stuff like that. But this enslavement. It's what builds the building block of society, and it's hard to fight. It's hard to say you're not enslaved. Uh, it just goes with society. It goes with civilization. You know, it's you line up to vote every 4 years for president, and you're in a controlled line. You can't do certain things on that line. You can't um, campaign. You can't wear. They don't like you wearing a Trump shirt or a Kamala shirt or something. There's certain rules that they want you to follow, and that's part of the enslavement. Just the idea that your vote matters and it doesn't uh, is part of the enslavement and part of the pacifier, which is what I call voting. Voting is just a pacifier for the masses, to shut them up and to make them just go along with the results. I did my part. I voted. I'm not responsible for the results, and that's what they want from you. And there's a wave of change, like we saw in Hungary today last week. Hungary changed over, and I don't know that it's for the better. Orban was very bad, but he wasn't in a lot of ways. I mean, I do think what he did with immigration was good. It's hard because it's a mixed bag. Letting all the immigrants into the country hurts the country, hurts the native people, and Orban protected the native people against that. But then he did other things like no freedom of speech, no freedom of press, and no, you couldn't say a bad thing about Orban in the news or the press, and his organizations owned the news and the press, so they didn't allow it. So and that's the problem with a lot of things. You get a lot of good, but that little bad, and not so good. And yeah, it's just. And you got to ask yourself, can you live with it? Can the hungry people live without freedom of press and freedom of speech? And is it worth it to not have immigrants, to have no freedom of speech? And I don't know that the new government will start ripping down the fencing and the walls they built to keep the immigrants out, whether physical or mental. Uh, but I don't know. I mean, the problem with immigrants is they don't fight for their own country. They leave their country and go destroy someone else's. And I think they need to stay in their country. You know, the Mexicans that come here, uh, or the El Salvadorians, or the Venezuelans, or whatever they are, should stay in Venezuela and make Venezuela a better country and make Venezuela deal with its problems rather than exporting them to us. You know, and that's the problem. They export them to us, and they cause problems here when they come. And we're not responsible for what happened in their country. I mean, and in some ways we are, because we create, the United States government creates problems in other countries for its own gain, its own end. And Venezuela has a lot of oil, and we need to keep them poor in certain ways so that we keep getting the oil at a good price. Yeah, so, like Saudi Arabia is not Venezuela. Saudi Arabia, we don't tell Saudi Arabia what to do, what to charge, but we do in Venezuela, and there's a reason for that, and so we do create a lot of the problems, and then we don't like that those problems come knocking on our southern border, and we have a very bad way of dealing with it. And it's all wrapped up in freedom. It's all wrapped up in enslavement. Uh, you know, the the big reason that slavery ended in the United States is because um, the desire for uneducated workforce was being erased. With all the farming equipment and the cotton gin and the cotton mill, or whatever you want to call it. You needed an educated person to run those machines, and the slaves were not educated. So, uh, and the slaves in the South were black, and the slaves in the white in the North were white. So, and don't think the slaves in the North that they weren't slaves. They were paid, but they were paid very minuscule amounts, and they weren't given a house, and they weren't given food, and they were taken advantage in a big way, and of course they used. Well, this is what they do in England, and if you don't follow this system here in America, then England's going to beat us out, and there will be no system in America, and England will beat us out and uh, destroy our industry in America. So you have to take these low wages so we can compete. And that was the line of crap that they were selling, and what people took. Why they took a low paying job, and they worked many hours, 7 days a week, and they worked 15-hour days, and they basically went to the bathroom right at the gin mill, right at the uh, cotton gin, because they couldn't leave, and they got sick. They worked at the cotton gin right there, sick, and there was no sick days. There was no nothing. So, if you don't think they were slaves, I don't know what your definition of slavery is, but I would say that fell under that umbrella. So, like I said, you can be mad, or you can do something about it. And I don't offer you that doing something about it is easy. It's not easy. It's very difficult. And the problem with freeing yourself isn't freeing yourself. The problem with freeing yourself is staying free for the rest of your life, and that is extremely difficult. It's like if you go into the woods and you start a fire and you pitch a tent and you say, I'm free. Well, how long can you do that? How long can you keep that up before you come out of those woods and say, all right, I'll take a job and get an employment. I'm tired of the woods. And then you're back in slavery. So you never really were free. You never really were free. You just escape prison for a little while. But like a person that escapes prison, how long can they escape prison before they get caught? Whether they get caught in a different country or a different state, they eventually get caught. You know, and that's all you're doing. And when you're in prison, an actual prison, it's there to keep the ones that aren't in prison in prison. You know, there's a reason you can go to a store and things are freely on the shelf because they know you're not going to steal it because you're going to go to prison. And that's why if you steal a pack of cigarettes, they want to put you in jail for like 20 years. They're sending the message that don't do it. You're going to pay if you do. And the one that does it pays. And it gets put on the paper, gets put on the news, so everybody knows. It's just like the guy that wins the $1 million jackpot at the casino. That gets put in the paper and on the news, and everybody knows he won it because they need to make the money back. Now, how many people see that ad? How many people see that news report and go to that casino thinking, I'm going to be the next one? It happened once, it can happen again. Or how many people go to that lottery place and where the 200 or 300 million or $1 billion lottery ticket was sold and want to buy a ticket from that gas station because they think lightning's going to strike twice, and it's most likely not. And and then sometimes it has a negative effect for the store. They don't sell tickets because people are like, oh, it's not lucky anymore. The luck is gone. It all depends because gamblers are very fickle and very superstitious. And you never can tell what they're going to do. But that's the idea is why they put it in the paper. They put it in the news, and they love it when somebody from Minnesota wins the Powerball because that just gets more Minnesotans to play. And a lot of people from those states, I don't believe, play as much. I mean, I'm sure they play, but not as much as New York and LA and the people in there aren't as many people in Minnesota as there are in New York and LA. But Powerball, the odds are the same. It doesn't matter what state you're in. Like I said, it's all in your mind, not in your body and your location. So, it's hard to be free. I do have an easy life. I mean, look at me. Am I rushed? Am I anxious? Am I full of anxiety? Am I full of fear? No, I'm none of those things. I mean, on occasion, I'll have a little anxiety here and there, but it's just because you have normal 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 things in your life, it doesn't equal enslavement. Look, I haven't filled out a tax return. Today's the 15th, so I haven't filled out a tax return in 26 years. And it's not because I'm breaking the law. It's not I'm beating this. Don't get me wrong. I'm not telling you not to fill out your taxes. But I haven't I haven't needed to fill out a tax return. I'm not required to fill out a tax return for the last 26 years. So, I mean, you on the other hand are and should. I'm not trying to put you in jail and that's another reason they get you to pay your taxes. I mean, you're not free. But, they tell you if you don't pay your taxes, then you won't get your Social Security. You don't pay your taxes, you won't get your medical. You'll hurt society. And what do they say when they need something new? what do? They raise the taxes, and who are they going to tax? They say they're going to tax the rich, and they never tax the rich because the rich can leave, and the rich pay the politicians' campaign funds. So, you know, it doesn't happen. The poor people are the ones that pay, and they always will, because they're enslaved. And don't get me wrong, the rich people are enslaved too. They're slaves to their money. They're slaves to their money. I don't care how much money you have. Like I said in that last title, you lack freedom. You don't lack money. You lack freedom. Freedom to do what you want. And not everybody can be free. Slavery has been around since Adam and Eve days, and it always will be. They're just haves and have-nots. And the problem with the haves is they think they're not slaves when they are. They're slaves. If I imprison you and make you my slave, I become your slave. So there's no way around that. So that's why the rich are slaves as well. Who doesn't try to escape prison? Out of all the people in prison, who doesn't try to escape prison? How about you think about that? The one who doesn't know he's in prison. And that's you.